Yes, I'm still here, Hollywood. Just ahead on today's episode.
And then slowly, right around the time of Clueless is where the pretending became different. Instead of pretending, it was, I'm going to be that guy I know about. Like the skater guy. He was a skater stoner.
Right.
I was a skater, never smoked weed in my life, but I knew stoners. And I knew how they talked. I knew how they walked. I'm 50. It was weird. That was funny. And I always thought about, I remember when, I think it was when Macaulay Culkin turned 40 or something, he sent out a social media thing that was like, hey, you want to feel bad? The guy from Home Alone's 40 now. You know, Brittany Murphy was one of the greatest people I know. Britt passed away as an adult, but she's one of those people who I always think about. I wish I could see what she would have done now.
Some teen movies only hit home with their target audience, teens. Most of those films come and go from theaters without a lot of fanfare. But once in a while, a movie comes along with adorable characters and spectacular lines that live on forever, filed away under Smarmy in our vocabularies. In 1995, one skateboarding stoner character won over audiences with his slightly buzzed kindness. He immediately became a heartthrob who would go on to bring that charm and talent to dozens of productions, both in front of and behind the camera. Whatever. This is Still Here Hollywood. I'm Steve Kmetko. Now, don't be totally bugging, but join me with today's guest from Clueless, Breckin Meyer. Hi, Breckin.
Hi, Steve.
Thanks for stopping by.
No worries. Thanks for having me, man.
Tell me, if somebody were to ask you if they'd never met you or kind of like me,
Sure.
and wanted to know what you did,
Yeah.
how would you describe what you do?
My friends and I always said, and I always say this to my kids, like my parents were academics, and I always say my parents were academics, and I put on makeup and pretend to be other people. That's it. I put on makeup and pretend to be other people for a living. And when I started acting, I was 11, and I was pointing at the TV going, I want to do that. But I was pointing at Tom and Jerry. I mean, I wasn't pointing at I Love Lucy or, Spencer Tracy or anything like that.
Yeah.
I was literally pointing at Tom and Jerry and the Smurfs. Going, I want to do that. And I didn't know what that meant.
Now you do.
Now I slightly do. But yeah, so I would say, I joke that I'm either a trained monkey or I say that, I put on makeup and pretend to be other people.
What was your first acting job?
A Supercuts commercial. I had long hair as a kid, and I had a Supercuts commercial, and I remember vividly the audition. It was the first improv thing I ever did where they said, turn around like you're in the chair, and he takes the smock off, and you like your haircut. That's the direction. And I was 11, and I turned around and went, wow, this is rad. And the guy went outside and said to my mom, who was the anti-stage mom, could you come in for a second? And I was like, oh, shit, what did I do? I already got in trouble. And he said, have you ever seen your son on camera? And she's like, no. And I don't care to, whatever. And he showed her the tape. And he goes, look at that. He's like, see how natural he is? And my mom and I both were like, I don't see what you're talking about. My mom's like, that looks like my kid. And that looks like him, and he sounds like him. And I remember vividly the cadence going, whoa, this is rad, because that's what I said to my friends. And I didn't understand what he saw. I still don't. But I got the commercial.
You were being you.
I was just being a natural kid. Yeah, I was just being me who got a nice haircut. And then the funny thing was I had long hair, and my mom's one agreement was, you can do this commercial, they cannot cut your hair.
Oh, they cannot
they cannot cut your hair. And I was like,
that was
Mom.
my next question. Did you get a free
No,
haircut?
I was like, Mom, it's a Supercuts commercial. And she was like, Supercuts is not that good in my opinion. I don't want them cutting your hair. And by the way, it wasn't like I was Samson and my mom loved my hair. That was just kind of, I think it was kind of her anti-stage mom thing of like, you can use my kid. You can't mess with him though. You can't cut his hair. And and then there was a gig. Gary Shandling was a very good friend of mine. I met him, I was friends with Gary for about 15 years. But before that, I had booked the Gary Shandling It's Gary Shandling show, his first show, as his nephew or his neighbor's son. But they wanted to dye my hair brown because the dad was Sonny from Grease. I'm forgetting his name right now, but Sonny in the movie Grease, who's a dark curly-haired guy. And again, my mom was like, can't dye his hair. And again, my mom was not like, oh, your hair's so beautiful. She wasn't like Honey Boo Boo or anything like that. She was just like, I don't want you to change my kid. If he wants to do it, fine. And she was like, do you want to dye your hair? I was like, I don't want to dye my hair. She's like, let's not do the job. I'm like, okay. That was it. So
now it has a little silver. A little.
Now it's got a lot of silver in it. And but it's there, so I'm happy about that. But
Yes.
yeah. But So that was my first commercial, was a Supercuts commercial.
And after that, what did you do next?
I had a really gradual progression. You know, like I grew up, you know, in my age range, it was me, Toby, Leo, Seth Green, Ethan Embry, all these guys who started when we were really young. And I just gradually worked. I booked Supercuts, then I did an Apple Jacks commercial, and then I did a guest spot on LA Law as the abused kid on the stand. And then I did, you know, so it was really gradual. It was never, boom, there you're in a movie and suddenly you're known like Macaulay Culkin or anything like that. I never had that. Luckily, it was a great thing. It turned out to be a great thing because I was never bombarded. I never had a stage mom. And so I just gradually worked. And it always became, my mom and I had an agreement, which was, hey, as long as it's fun for you, I'll take you to auditions. But if you drink or get caught with drugs, now again, your parents have to take you to auditions until you're 16. If you do anything before you're 16, after you're 16, I can't do anything. I can't control you. I mean, you'll still live in a house and stuff, but I can't drive. You can drive at 16. And so she said, but until then, if I'll take you to auditions, I don't like them, but I'll take you to them. But you got to keep your grades up and you got to be a good human. And that was it. So it was always, do you want to keep doing it? Are you still having fun doing it? You still have to go to school, still have to do your homework. So I was real lucky that I never, looking back now, I never had that one thing where at 10 I couldn't go anywhere or adults were yelling at. I never had that. I was always very gradual. I tend to work in the summer or when finals were. I think that was subconscious. I'd book a gig during finals so I wouldn't have to take them. I was very lucky that I never, you know, like when Titanic blew up for Leo, I can't remember, you guys know, 18 or 19 or something. But I worked with Soleil Moonfry after Punky Brewster and saw, and Soleil's an incredible person in spite of all she went through as being famous as a kid. So I saw it, but I was always on the kind of outside of it looking at going, oh man, that looks like it would suck. And I don't have to worry about that. And
Did you ever take acting lessons or anything, or was it just on-the-job training?
Yeah, it was on-the-job training. I got an agent when I was 11 through a girlfriend, my hand-holding girlfriend when I was 11, got me an audition with an agent. And I remember I had to do I apologize to your viewers because you guys can take a nap for this, but my first audition was for you go to the agency, and in order for them to decide if they want to rep you, they give you a little commercial to read. And mine was for Peter Pan peanut butter commercial. And you were supposed to clap your hands for Peter Pan. I remember the line. And I went in and did it, and they were like, great, you should take some acting classes, but we'd like to represent you if you take some acting classes. And I was like, cool, I'm not going to do that because I'm doing this for fun, and I don't look at it like that. I'm 11. I just want to have fun. So I did. So I never took classes. I just on the job learned. I was pretending. And then slowly, right around the time of Clueless is where the pretending became different. Instead of pretending, it was, I'm going to be that guy I know about. Like the skater guy. He was a skater stoner. Right. I was a skater, never smoked weed in my life, but I knew stoners. And I knew how they talk. I knew how they walk. And I was also a little bit of an obnoxious mimic. So when they said he's a stoner, I go, great, Spicoli from Fast Times, who coincidentally was directed by Amy Heckerling, who did Clueless. And it was, okay, I'll take that from Sean Penn. And, Bill and Ted's one of my favorites. And Keanu Reeves is blowing doors off in Parenthood. And I loved his physicality. He always had this thing of, there was always this hop to Keanu Reeves. And I remember the minute I read Clueless, like, that's who it is. And so I went in there and took Spicoli and Keanu and put it together. And it was the first time it felt like, I created a character. I created this guy. Instead of just saying the words and looking charming or smirky, I had this guy where I was like, I'm going to be that guy and have fun with it. And then I noticed that I could stay in the character and even improving. There's some improv in Clueless that just came out of the day because we were so not methody, like in character. You couldn't talk to me, call me Breckin, or Travis, I don't care. But it was the first time where I really created a character. And coincidentally, I was around 18 or 19 where I was like, I think this is a different level of acting. I think this could be different. And then it was fun for me because from 11 to 19, I'd been doing this certain type of performing, copying, mimicking, whatever. And then at 18, I went to a kind of another level where I was like, And I overused the word fun, but it became another level of fun. And I mean that in a dramatic sense as well. It was just a good time. Like, it was neat. Like, oh, I can get into the head of other people as well, not just the exterior. This is going to be interesting.
Clueless was a pretty big movie.
Yeah.
Did it change your life?
No, not, I mean, that's interesting. I would always say no, and now as I'm about to turn 50, I'd go, yeah, looking back, probably. I mean, I definitely got opportunities I would have never gotten because of those. Friendships I still have. So yeah, I think in hindsight, it did. At the time, it was neat. I was on a sitcom before the movie came out, so it was very interesting. I was booked, meaning I couldn't do anything when Clueless came out. Like, I couldn't use the heat of that for another movie or anything like right off the bat because I was on a series, and I couldn't get off. So until my hiatus, I couldn't work on something else. So that again kind of kept me sheltered from all the crazy. I still got to work, and obviously I was happy working. But now I look at it more like, now it's so funny that there are Halloween costumes every year of people dressed as Cher, of course, but also I get Travis things. And the number one fan encounter I always remembered was older than me. A guy came up to me, ran across the street to stop me. And, I made Clueless when I was 19 or came out when I was 20, I think. And he said, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I don't mean to bother you. I just want to tell you, I went to rehab and got sober, and I'm however many, I don't remember, it was 2 or 3 years after the movie. And I got sober because I figured if Travis Birkenstock could do it, I could do it. And it was a hybrid of emotion when he told me. First of all, I was like, that's amazing. Thank you so much. And then when he left, I was like, that's fucking insane that character made you, just because he's such a light, fluffy character, it's like a Labrador. And so you're like, wow, Labrador made you go to rehab. Okay. I mean, whatever gets you there, fantastic. But that was the first time where I was getting like stopped. I remember I was in Jerry's Deli, and it was the first time I got stopped. And it was like a real, like, while you're eating kind of like, oh, hi. And it didn't bother me, but it was just interesting. The only thing it did was it cut down my ability, which I think a lot of actors have. It hindered my ability to people watch as much as I like to do. Like, I could sit if my flight gets delayed, for the most part, unless you got to be somewhere, I'm never that upset because I kind of like sitting in airports, people watching. That was the only positive thing I could say about the pandemic was because the mask, everyone was anonymous. So I could sit around and no one would, but like Seth Green, who's one of my best friends and producing partners, Seth, he's got flame red hair. He's a beacon. So if he doesn't, during the pandemic, he could put a hat on. No one knew who he was. It was great. But so yeah, I think Clueless, looking back now, sure, it definitely changed. But it's amazing the longevity it's had it's just silly to me. It's, in a great way. Silly in it's unbelievable. It's so funny.
You hear nightmares about kids in Hollywood.
It's nonstop. Again, Brittany Murphy was one of the greatest people I know, and I knew Britt way before Clueless. We played boyfriend and girlfriend, I think, 4 times before Clueless. So when we auditioned together, it was like, oh, this is easy. And then Britt and I did King of the Hill together for 8 years, and then I took over for a role she did, not when she passed away. Before that, like the character's voice changed, and I took over, but she was still Luann on King of the Hill. So I see, after Clueless, Britt and I worked together for another 8 years, and she was, Britt passed away as an adult, but she's one of those people who I always think about. I wish I could see what she would have done now, because again, Brittany was so crazy talented, and only the surface had been dealt with. Like, she was such a good singer, and seeing how many people now cross over into music and movies, I was like, oh, I would have loved to have seen Brittany do that.
Did her death hit you hard?
Yeah, it sucked. It was it was really bad. I wish I could say I wish I could say I was more surprised when it happened, just because of that. It's her business, whatever. But that toxic guy she was with, Simon, was just a fucker. And so I knew Britt before, I knew during, and then when she passed away. And it was the amount of things that it's a small world. Philippi Ryan, who was a very close friend of mine, lived 5 houses from Brittany. So literally we were there when the sirens were going on, and we didn't know what it was. But we were hanging at Phil's house when the sirens are going up to, I think it was Britney Spears' old house, Brittany Murphy's new house, when we all heard it was terrible. Brittany was she was a bottle of soda. She was the sun. She was so effervescent and great. And for her to pass away like that, and in such a shitty way, and in such a toxic relationship, it just was terrible. It was not only because your friend, but because of what everyone else doesn't get to see anymore. But yeah, that sucked in the same way. Yeah, it was terrible.
You and Seth were photographed for an issue of GQ magazine.
Probably.
Back in the late 90s or early 2000s.
Okay.
I only know because they took a picture of me too.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Of how I dressed on the red carpet or something like
right
that.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had my dog with me, and it was a little Yorkshire Terrier, Stella, and they stuck her in my tuxedo and took a picture of me. I thought it was pretty neat.
Yeah.
And that I was in an issue with you guys.
Was Seth in my tuxedo?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Or I'd be in his, either way. We're both knee-high to a grasshopper.
Oh, careful. On the topic of fun,
yeah.
Are you still having fun?
Yeah. You mean in the job?
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely am. And then probably about 12 years ago, I started writing as well. And that was another outlet that became very fun. Again, I overused the word. It just was so enjoyable. I had so much fun with it. Seth and I have been writing our animated show, Robot Chicken, for 14 years now. So I get to work with my best friend on a side project that's not the acting thing. It's super enjoyable. And then I wrote a show, Men at Work. I wrote a sitcom that I got to run. I never knew what a showrunner was. And suddenly I was running a show for 3 years. And then on Franklin and Bash, I started writing on that. And it was just, honestly, it was another level of enjoyment of the process. And then it also made me look at acting in a different way, because I was creating even more than just creating a character. I was now creating a world. And that was really enjoyable. I still love doing that. I mean, that's become a big part of my world.
I forget who said it originally, but I like the sound of it. If you're doing something you like, you won't work a day in your life.
Yeah.
And it really is true, isn't it?
Oh, I absolutely. I mean, even, again, actors are, the worst thing is, and I get it. Everyone has tough jobs. Everyone has tough days. So it's always tough when you hear any actor whine. The first thing you want to say is like, oh, shut up. You get paid to pretend, blah, blah. I get that. But also, it's a job. And there are times you're away from your family, or you're sitting in a room for 7 hours, and then, by the way, we're not getting your shot today. And then, by the way, you're still getting paid. You could be digging ditches. It could be much worse. But even that, after 7 hours, you're like, really? I just didn't do anything today? Like, oh, that doesn't feel good. But yeah, absolutely. I still have fun with it, and it changes, and it gets tough, and it gets interesting, and everything about it, being pigeonholed, fighting out of that, all the things that happen in a career. I joke with Seth that we're vets of this now, which is so funny, being 49.
Well, that's one of the things I'd like to ask you about you, too. I have a hard time looking at you and thinking, ooh, you're going to be 50? You're going to be 50?
Yeah.
Do you have a hard time with that, too?
The other day it hit me. It was just like, I always knew, I never really cared about age. The other day, just the phrasing of, oh, right, in May I'm 50 was weird. That was fun. And I always thought about, I remember when, I think it was Mac, when Macaulay Culkin turned 40 or something, he sent out a social media thing that was like, hey, you want to feel bad? The guy from Home Alone's 40 now, and I thought about that when I was turning 50. I was like, hey, you want to feel bad about yourself? Travis is 50. Travis the skateboarder is 50. So, or not yet, he will be.
You're okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that, truthfully. I'm fine with that because I've been fortunate enough that my career has had a bunch of different things in it, and I wasn't, if I was one character, if everywhere I went it was only Travis, I could see over the years that being a thing. Knock on wood, I've been lucky enough to have, whether it's Travis or Road Trip or Rat Race, like, that's a fun thing. When someone comes up and says, what do I know you from? Usually you're like, I don't know, I don't want to go over my whole resume with you right now. But it's also a compliment, because it's like, there are a bunch of different things I don't know. And I usually have to go by the demographic. Like when I meet someone, I'm like, all right, do you have kids? It might be Garfield. Wait, are you a teenager? Oh, you went to college in my age? Okay, you're Road Trip. Or a family? Rat Race. So I've had fun with that. So I do enjoy that part of the job. It's just, to be able to continue to do it. So I think that's one of the things why I've enjoyed it, is that I get to mix it up. If you don't, it's tougher. It's, and I've had that. I've played, I get a lot of offers to play the stoner guy and things like that, and it's up to you whether you want to do it or not.
I would imagine Keanu Reeves probably got that same thing after Bill and Ted for a while.
I imagine he absolutely does.
And
probably way more than I do.
Maybe. And we'll be right back.
I would say, and anytime I get interviewed by anyone that wasn't you, my first question was always, where's Steve Kmetko? Not because I wanted him to interview me. I just want to see him. Where is he? I want to know he's real. It's like...
He's real. You said just before you came here you were busy dadding.
I was dadding. Yes, I was dadding.
Tell me about that. You have a daughter who's going to be 21.
I have two youngins. I have two girls. One's going to be 21. The other's 13. And they're great. I enjoy. It's my favorite. It's my favorite job. Way more than acting. Way more than writing is being a dad. So.
Do you tell them the same kinds of things your mom told you?
It's interesting. My 20-year-old is in school for acting, and it's tough because there's the dad part of me goes, oh fuck no, absolutely not. I don't want you to have that life. No. And the artist, whatever you want to say, actor in me goes, yeah, it's tough. I'm going to tell you not to do the thing I've been doing since I was 11 years old. But again, my parents had a deal that I think a lot of parents have with kids, which is you go to college, we pay your way. If they can, we go to college, we pay your way. If you don't, you're on your own. Meaning if you're not going to go to college, then get a job. And that was presented to me. And I'd been working a bit. Again, nothing giant, but I've been gradually working. And I applied to one college. I wasn't thinking about college too much. I always thought I'd be a kindergarten teacher. And I knew you had to go to college probably for that. And this came the moment. When I was 18, I thought, it's either acting or college. I don't really think of myself as going to college, but I'll apply. And I applied to one. I just followed my older brother. I was like, oh, you applied to Northridge? Okay, I will. And they said, what do you want to do with you? What do you want to major or whatever? I had to fill out. And I was like, acting? I don't know. And they said, you got in? I was like, I don't care. And so I was about to go. And I booked a pilot. That didn't even end up going. But I booked a pilot, a paying job. And I was like, I'm gonna try it. And if I don't, I might go back to college or I might get a job, whatever. And that was it. And so I just kept doing it. And I kept doing it. So it's tough as a dad to say no because I did it. But it's different. It's a different time now. The business is different. Social media wasn't around when I was a kid. I mean, by the way, I can't thank people more for the fact that this didn't get invented when I was young and stupid and making the dumbest mistakes and bad jokes and, just stupid shit. But
ooh, yeah, they come down on you. There's a million people out there at least.
I couldn't imagine that. I mean, having two daughters in the world of social media it's new. For so many years, no one ever had to deal with that. Yeah, you had to deal with phone call. Okay, you can't be on the phone after 10. And then it became cell phones. And then it's like, all right, well, you can't be on your cell phone till after 10. And then it became social media, all these screen time things and everything like that never existed. So it's definitely different. I don't know it's easier. It's definitely just different.
It is different. Sitting here listening to you, I mean this in the best possible way. Do you realize how lucky you have been that you got that first job and you never really... I've talked to so many people over the years who've really had to work and gone through disappointment and, nose to the grindstone and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I've had versions of, again, everyone runs their own race. And mine was fortunate in the way that I kept working. I did have things, after Clueless, right before Clueless. Again, I think I'm so bad with times. You guys can Google it and figure it out. But I was around 18 or 19 when I booked Clueless, and then it came out when I was 20. And right before I booked Clueless, as a young actor kid going on his own not going to college and paying his own way since I moved out when I was 17, and that was on me. When I was 18, right before Clueless, I blew everything. I had no more money. I blew all my money on being a kid. And nothing stupid. I wasn't buying cars or anything like that. I was literally, I'm going to go fly to see my girlfriend who's doing a movie of the week in Australia. I'll go see her. And then, I want to go see her again. And I'll do that. And then, we broke up. I'm going to go home now. And so I blew all my money. And I called my dad. And I said, I don't want anything. I don't want any money. But I need help. I don't know how to budget, it seems. I have this much left, and it was something like $5,000. And my rent, I think, was $730. And so I was like, this is all I have for the foreseeable future, how do I make this last? And he was basically like, you can't, essentially. But first thing, stop driving your car because that runs on gas. If you don't need to do it, don't. No problem. I got a skateboard. That's fine. I didn't have my heat turned on. I moved into a new place, and I was like, I'm broke. I'm going to move into a new place, and I need help budgeting. And my dad did not suggest this. This was me doing this. He suggested budgeting. I was like, well, I'll go one better. So I didn't get heat turned on, which includes hot water. I didn't get gas turned on. I had power, and that was it. I had no furniture. My address was a third, and I was above a garage. And if I sneezed, the guy in the garage would bless me. That's how thin everything was. And I had the car that I bought when I had some money as a 16-year-old kid. So my Pathfinder, which looked like the car in Tango and Cash, which is why I got it, would just sit out front on the street with no one driving it because I was on my skateboard. And so because I didn't have hot water, I also didn't have a shower. I had cold water in the shower if you want, but that was it. And so I didn't have laundry. And so once a month, I would take my laundry bag, throw it over my shoulder, and skateboard from deep North Hollywood to Encino to where Seth Green lived.
You're kidding.
No, and Seth Green lived, and Seth was doing commercials and had some nice apartment, and he had a washer and dryer. So I would skateboard with my laundry.
That is a good friend.
Yeah, it's a great friend. I would skateboard with my laundry to Sethy's house, do my laundry, throw it over my shoulder again, skate back home, and use his house to shower. And then my audition for Clueless, if you know Los Angeles, I was in deep North Hollywood. The audition was at Paramount, which is, Melrose and Gower.
Yeah.
Very far away. Almost impossible to get there without a freeway or a canyon. And I was only on a skateboard. So I skateboarded from deep North Hollywood over Highland, Cahuenga by the Hollywood Bowl to Paramount to audition for Clueless because I didn't have money for my car. So I arrived sweating, greasy, long-haired, gross dude, but also kind of fit the part of little skater stoner kid. But yeah, so that's where I was. That's where I was living when kind of the shit hit the fan. So I did. Sorry to get back to my long-winded answer. I do recognize how lucky I'd been that I continued to work even through those valleys when luckily my dad kind of was like, spend this a month. And during that time when I had no hot water or anything was my audition for Clueless, and I booked it, and it gave me enough money to pay my rent and get out of that apartment the next year. And so yeah, in hindsight, yeah, it really did change my life because I was living, it was bad. It was dark time. So much so, I remember I said, it's the only time ever I've thought about quitting. I never have, really. I don't even know if this would count, but I was auditioning for ER when it was like a guest spot. And I never did guest spots as a kid. I don't know why, I just never booked them really. And this was a very, tortured patient in ER. I was in the waiting room with Seth. He was auditioning too. Sethy was auditioning. And I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. He's like, what? I don't know what this is. Like, I don't know how to, and I just kind of this whiny, bitchy freak out where I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't want to do this. And Sethy was great. We weren't even that close. He was just like, the fuck are you talking about? This is what you've done your entire life. By the way, you don't want to do it, don't fucking do it. But don't bitch and say you don't know how to do it. That's a cop-out. And it was so great. And I went in to the audition, did terrible, didn't get it, of course. But the next audition was this NYPD Blue audition, and I heard Seth in my head say, like, you know how to do this, and I booked it. And the next audition after that was when I met Ryan Phillippe, oddly enough. I booked that as well, and that's very rare that you book like 2 things in a row. But it was momentum, and it started me up again. And I thank Sethy for that every day, that it was, every now and then it takes your friend to kick you in the ass.
Yeah, sometimes you just need a voice.
Yeah. You just need either a sounding board or a voice to go, hey, stop. Don't be so hard on yourself. And by the way, it's a lottery of an occupation. To get 1 job is a lottery. And to get 2 is unheard of. And 3, hey, you got a career. But I realize now, having seen all that, whether it's the Nickelodeon documentary, all that stuff is, and my mom passed away recently, but holy shit, do I owe her a debt of gratitude for keeping me safe in that world. I don't mean safe sexually, I mean everything. I just mean as a kid, I had a childhood. I was an actor who was working almost nonstop since I was 11, but I had a childhood. And I had a pretty good relationship with my mom, and I have a great relationship with my dad. And my mom was never my manager. My mom was never My mom had a career. She was a microbiologist at UCLA, couldn't give a shit about supercuts. My dad's a professor at USC at the time, couldn't give a shit, Trojan and Bruin couldn't give a shit about supercuts and all that. But they were supportive. But they weren't living through me, and I wasn't the cash cow. They weren't surviving because of me.
So I hear a very practical voice coming out of you.
Yeah, it's weird. I think it's age. But no, I think it's them. Truly, I think it's my parents, the fact that my mom, it's so boring, I apologize, but I've seen people.
It's just, the older I get, the more I reflect on how I got here, and everything that's gone on. And it all adds to the person you become, every little experience.
Yeah, it takes a while to look back at it. It's funny, like, looking back, I watched that Nickelodeon thing recently, and it's amazing to see I remember going into auditions as a little kid, and there would be mothers with their ears against the door, mother and dads, with their ears against the door, hearing their kid audition. Whatever, fine, you want to do that. But when they come out, they would berate their kid. Be like, Sammy, I told you didn't hit the line your. We went over that in the car. Why didn't you hit your? We're not stopping for ice cream. That. And it sounds silly and goofy, but that's fucking dreadful. On a day, you do that, you have 4 auditions a day. 4 times you're under that kind of pressure and stuff. And she wasn't doing it intentionally. It wasn't a calculated move, but my mom was just didn't want to do that. This wasn't her dream or anything like that. So she never was on set. She was always on set she was always aware, present, but she wasn't the mom watching me like that. She would, if I was needed, she was always there. She was always with her book, her mystery book or whatever, in the far corners behind all the other stage moms. And they'd always ask her, like, how come you're not moving up there? And she's like, oh, he's doing what he's doing. That's all right. And it was really because it just made her uncomfortable. It's a weird scene to see kids. Adult sitcom life is weird, and kid acting is strange a lot with school you have to do during it and all that. But she really did. Like, she'd watch, and she was proud of me. By the way, make no mistake, she was super proud, but she was never pushing. She was supportive, but never pushing me, which was pretty great.
You said you were close with Gary Shandling too.
Yeah.
His death came as kind of a surprise.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere.
Yep.
I believe it was a heart attack, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I don't even know what technically the final.
He was a good guy too.
Gary was incredible, and Gary. One of the things that one of the things about Gary that I never knew as much. I knew during, but I don't think other people knew as much until after. I don't know if that's English, what I just said. I'll start over. One of the things that I don't think people knew, and I didn't know as much about how much he mentored other people. And not just comics. Like, I know a lot of comedians who mentor other comedians. Gary was for everybody, whether it was Sasha doing Borat, whether it was Favreau doing Iron Man, whether it was Favreau doing Jumanji, or all these things. When we'd play basketball at Gary's, we'd play ball, and then around noon or so, we'd all just eat and hang out. And a lot of times people would come by who weren't in the basketball game to just chat with Gary. I have friends, when I started show running, second person I reached out to was Gary. And because Gary ran the Larry Sanders Show, which to me is one of the greatest comedies ever. And he, like a kind of war-torn general, gave me advice on how to run a show and how to be a boss and how to be involved and involve your writers and just be how to be a boss. I'd never done it before. I'd always worked for other people. But he mentored so many people and was so helpful for everybody I knew, whether it was a stand-up, was a writer, whether it was a director, whether it was a musician, would go to Gary for advice on life, on music, on directing, on writing, on acting. And he was always so great about it. And it is the exact opposite of kind of the persona that is Gary Shandling. So I've been really lucky with the people I've been able to work with and become friends with. I met Gary because we had the same makeup guy. And I was a huge fan. I like basketball, so I got invited to play. But yeah, and again, his death, talk about just two people who were gone way too soon, very different ages, but Brittany and Gary both. I'm bummed we don't get to see more of their stuff. That's disappointing. That's selfishly as a fan, So.
You sound like you've got it knocked.
No, I just have. As I get older, I look back and I just think, as a parent, I'm like, my folks did pretty good for someone who's in the business, because there's a lot of other versions that aren't as that don't have as nice of a progression ending. Whatever, and it's not over yet, but you know what I mean. No, it's tough. And again, having a daughter who wants to do it, it's a very different time. I'm very curious, but she's a better actor than I am. She's more trained than I am already, and she's 20. So, but it's also, again, it's the lottery. But do you remember, I don't even know if, I'm sure you do, I used to say your last name in almost every press junket I did. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah. Oh, I mean, I swear, if there was B-roll, they could go through the files of E. The amount of times, because when you first start doing press as a young actor, in Clueless, by the way, exactly, the Clueless junket. We were doing the Clueless junket, and Donald Faison and I had never been interviewed before. And there's all these cameras and stuff, and we see E comes in to interview us, and we know the logo, and there's E, and your last name, for some reason, was like an earwig, and it just burned into my brain, where I swear you could find it. There's B-roll of me doing an entire interview, and the only answers I give are Kmetko. The only answers I give are Kmetko. Because it was...
I like that.
It was the most... I don't know if it's the K sounds or what, but it was just... Anytime I get interviewed by anyone that wasn't you, my first question was always, where's Steve Kmetko? Not because I wanted him to interview me. I just want to see him. Where is he? I want to know he's real. It's like...
He's real.
Yeah, now I know. But yeah, I would say your name all the time. Me, Adam Scott, Rudd. I remember we would all enjoy the name Kmetko.
I interviewed Paul once.
Yeah.
Yeah, funny guy. Boy,
Sweetheart.
His career's taken off.
Sweetheart.
Yeah.
Sweetest guy on the planet. Clearly, eats babies or drinks vampire blood. But
That's
other than
something,
that,
huh?
yeah, he'll never die. No. Paul Rudd siempre viva. He'll just live forever.
What are you working on now?
What am I working on now? We just did our, I don't even know what number it is. God, I can't think of it. 12th season of Robot Chicken, I think. We've done a new special for Robot. We just finished writing. Mark Paul Gosselaar and I, who I did Franklin and Bash with, have a new show at NBC, a new pilot that we're doing, a procedural together. And then I think there's a movie I did called Quarter that is coming out soon. I'm so bad with this stuff. I keep working, but I don't know when it all comes out.
As long as you remember the name Kmetko.
I remember the name Kmetko. That's all I need. That's my safe word. In any aspect
it's my
of
danger
my life,
word.
it is my safe word.
Have you ever met anybody else named Breckin?
Since me now, yes. Before, no. I mean, I've had people come up who have said, "Hey, I've named my son after you. This is Breckin." So I've met a couple kids. There was one young actor I met named Breckin. And I get people on social media who are like, "Oh, I named my kid or dog after you." And it's not
That's kind of neat.
I mean, it's just the name. Yeah, my dad, I'm pretty sure my dad was high when he heard it. It was his friend's brother, and it was spelled in the real Welsh way, which is CH umlaut. I have no idea. But when I was born, they said, "What? How do you spell the name?" And my dad was like, B-R-E-C-K. He spells it wrong. B-R-E-C-K-I-N is how he decided to do it. My brothers are Adam and Frank, and I'm Breckin. It makes no sense.
Did Birkenstock ever come through for you?
No, I played, because in my head, Travis Birkenstock was always some heir, some celebu, whatever you want to, nepo baby to the Birkenstock fortune. I always thought about that. And I'm sure Amy named it that because he was kind of a modern hippie. But no, I never got a Birkenstock. I never even got one. Not even one shoe, let alone a pair. No, I never got Birkenstock. And I've never owned a pair of Birkenstocks. Maybe I've subconsciously been protesting.
Well, maybe if you were a lesbian.
There you go. See? That's what's
a
missing.
joke. That's a joke.
Missing. I could stretch as an actor. So.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, man. Thank you. I
enjoyed this.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I didn't know quite what to expect since we'd never
this is it.
talked before.
This is the ABCs
but I enjoyed this.
Of me. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Still Here Hollywood is a production of the Still Here Network. All things technical run by Justin Zangerle. Theme music by Brian Sanashin. And executive producer is Jim Lichtenstein.